So good morning and welcome. My name is Reverend Dr. Ron Fox, and welcome to the Sunday celebration for the Center for Spiritual Living, Space Coast. And if there's anybody that's watching this during the week that's not familiar with the Center for Spiritual Living, we believe there's one God, many paths to that God, and we're here to love, honor, and support you no matter what your divine path is. And the Center for Spiritual Living, Space Coast is a safe haven for people of all beliefs and lifestyles. Whoever you are and wherever you find yourself on your journey of faith, you're welcome here. So we're going to begin our service this morning with our practitioner, Ginny Panic, opening us up with a prayer, and then Ed Powers will do a spiritual reading for us.
So let us come together right here and right now, breathing in and breathing out, moving ourselves into the center of this day, this beautiful, magnificent day, the day that the Lord has made. So I know that there is only one power, one source, one all that is everywhere present, omniscient, omnipotent, that knows us better than we know ourselves, that moves us as we turn our attention to us. As we turn our attention to it, it is ever available, and it moves us into a greater awareness of the truth of who we are. It moves us past the illusion of the world of form to the truth of what is. It allows us to immerse ourselves in the understanding that the unseen is greater than the seen. And so I'm so grateful this morning to feel this power that is closer than my breath, nearer than the air. And I'm grateful for the Center for Spiritual Awareness and the opportunity that it gives to everyone to understand this truth. And I'm grateful this morning to Reverend Dr. Ron Fox and his message, because I know, and we know together, that it will illuminate us, lift us up, and move us into this new week with an understanding of possibility thinking. And so with gratitude and thanksgiving, I release this into the great I am that only says yes. And please say with me, and so it is.
And so it is.
In getting back to basics, I'm going to talk about what we are, starting with a quote from The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. Quote, "Nothing has existence for man or woman, save through the consciousness he has of it. Therefore, it is to consciousness you must turn, for it is the only foundation on which the phenomena of life can be explained. The first cause substance being consciousness, all its evolutions, fruits, and phenomena must remain consciousness." End quote. In other words, if our consciousness is the only reality, it must also be the only substance. Consequently, what appears to you and I as circumstances, conditions, and even material objects is really only the product of your awareness. Other words for consciousness and awareness are intelligence and thought. The physical universe we see is thought. And look who's thinking now. We are points of awareness. We are God experiencing life as us. Show God a good time. God, as God particles, our spirit must have existed in some form before we were here. We came from God, pure love and joy and divine intelligence, to be here. Why would we leave there to be here? Because the journey of life through illusions and believed in limits, all thoughts by the way, is a wonderful adventure. Life can't be beat. And even as God particles, there's no way that we, living in our little human bodies with our little human brains, can know everything. However, we can always get that nugget of wisdom that enables us to live our own lives joyfully, successfully, and on purpose. Think about it. It's all you.
Thanks, Ed. So, if you haven't guessed, my title today is Back to Basics. And it used to be when I first became a minister that it was kind of the way people did things, that January was the month that they would do 4 talks on the basics. And most don't do that anymore. And I definitely don't. So I want to try to do 4 talks in one today, which was really fun to try to package. So I want to begin with a story. And my guess is that a lot of you have heard this. There's a bunch of different versions of it that are out. But it's a story about a pregnant lioness that attacks a herd of sheep. And she really extends a lot of energy during doing this. And the fact that she's pregnant and she's done all this energy and then she gives birth, she doesn't live through the birth, but her cub does. And the sheep raise this lion cub, and he thinks he's a sheep. He bleats like the sheep do, and he eats grass like they do, and he lives the life of a sheep. And about a year or so, maybe 2 years later, another lion attacks this group of sheep, and they all flee, but the little guy doesn't. And he looks at this lion, he's never seen a lion before, and he lets out a little bleat. And the lion looks at him and says, "You're not a sheep. You're a lion like I am." And he says, no, I'm not. And so the big lion takes him by the scruff of the neck, and he walks him to a pond. And he says, look at you. Look, what do you look like? And it registers, but not totally. So the big guy takes him back to his den, and he offers him some meat from a prior kill. And the little guy says, "No, I'm a vegetarian." And the big guy says, "No, you're not." And he forces him to have a little meat. And between seeing the big lion, seeing himself, and the meat, he gets it. And he lets out a little roar, and then a bigger roar, and the two of them go on a hunt together. So why do I start with that story? I start with it because I think one of the things Ernest Holmes tells us is that there are a lot of us, that all of us are lions, but a lot of us live like sheep. And we don't have to do that, because all of us are made in the image and likeness of God. And he's telling us that we're all spiritual powerhouses. And we need to awaken to our power, and that you and I can partner with God to create the life that we want to live. And the first 4 chapters in the book Science of Mind that Ernest Holmes wrote, the first 4 chapters are titled The Thing Itself, The Way It Works, What It Does, and How to Use It. And I remember when I first came into Science of Mind, I thought, that's really strange titles for a book about God and about how we interact with God. And it wasn't until years later that I found that, and in fact, I just saw it again this week, that he did that on purpose so people would be open to the message and look beyond their previous conditioning about how they feel about God, so they would get a message about what God is and what God does. And in her prayer this morning, her opening prayer, Ginny talked about what when we were in ministerial school, we called the 3 omnis, that God is omniscient, that God is omnipresent, and that God is omnipotent. And what that means is, omnipotent means that God is all powerful. Omniscient means that God is all knowing, and omnipresent means that all of God is everywhere at once. And so when one of the things that Ernest Holmes tells us that he teaches us is that we are all surrounded by the mind of God. And that mind of God is not only around us, it's within us, and it is the creative factor that's within us and around us. And by thinking, we can have this creative power do its work so you and I can experience what we wish to experience in life. In other words, spirit works for us by working through us. And it only becomes a power to us when we recognize it as a power to us. And so what does that mean? It means that we have free choice. And Holmes says in the book, could you imagine God creating all of us like it is and then putting us in bondage? What kind of a God would do that? No, you and I have free choice. We can choose to invite spirit into our life or to not invite spirit into our life. And what it is, our belief sets the limit to a power that demonstrates that is without limit. So your and my belief sets the limit to what we experience, because spirit is a power that's limitless. It can fulfill every dream and every wish that we have because it's without limit. So Ernest Holmes tells us it's not a question of its willingness or its ability, it's a question of our receptivity. And that is why we say, and why Jesus said, it's done unto you as you believe. What we believe and what we put out into that creative medium is what returns to us as the experiences of our life. And so you can ask, well, why are some prayers answered and not others? So when we see that, it's not a matter of spirit or God's receptivity. It's not how God responded to us, but rather how some people have responded to God. And Alan Cohen put it really wonderfully. Alan Cohen wrote, peace must come to those who ask for it. Strength must be given to those who claim it. And love must bring healing to all who open to receive it. The time of awakening is here. So again, he's reinforcing the idea that we can demonstrate what we believe. If we can only conceive a little bit of good to come into our life, that's what we're going to experience. If we can conceive a lot of good coming into our life, that's what we're going to experience. Ernest tells us that the seeds of freedom are planted within us, but we have to discover that freedom ourselves. And so in one of his books, he has this story, this cute story, I think, that brings the point home. And it's about a fellow who every night when he goes to sleep, he has a nightmare. And the nightmare is that he's getting chased by some kind of monster. And just every night as the monster is about to grab him, he wakes up. And so one night he says before he goes to sleep, I'm going to make this different this night. And he has the nightmare. And just when the monster is about to grab him, instead of waking up, he turns on the monster and they look at each other. And the fella says to the monster, so what are you going to do to me now? And the monster says, I don't know. It's your dream. What's going to happen? We have that choice. We have that ability to decide what's going to come into our life and how much of spirit we're going to invite into our life. Wayne Dyer said that our futures are formed by the thoughts we hold most often. We become what we think about. And we have the ability to write our own story. And Wayne Dyer tells a story. You know, his family was split up and he lived in foster homes. But when his mother got enough money, and I guess she remarried to get them all back together, one of the things he would do when he was 13 years old, when everybody was asleep, he would watch The Tonight Show. And this was a long time ago when Steve Allen was the host of The Tonight Show. Wayne Dyer would watch it, and his dream was to be on The Tonight Show, hopefully with Steve Allen. And he would actually rehearse routines and what he was going to say to Steve Allen and how they were going to interact. Well, now it's years later, and he's published his first book. And one of the producers of The Tonight Show reads it and says, "We got to book him." So they book him. And the night that he's booked for, Shecky Green, who is a comedian, was the guest host. And Wayne Dyer is backstage and he's so excited. He can't wait. So he goes to a payphone. Remember payphones? And he calls his wife to tell his wife how excited he is. And he looked over, I guess there was a row of payphones, and he looks over, and guess who's on the next phone? Steve Allen. So he goes out and he has a wonderful show with Shecky Green. And later, the next day, he's informed the show was preempted. It's not going to be on. And Johnny Carson now comes back, and Johnny Carson invites him on the next week, and he doesn't put him on till the last couple of minutes. So Carson invites him back again the next week. And they do a really long show, and it's terrific. And that same week, the show that was preempted shows, and Wayne Dyer airs. And Wayne Dyer says, "Here, for years, I've wanted to be on The Tonight Show. And all of a sudden, in the space of 11 days, I'm on 3 times, and my entire life changed." And here it all started. It all began because of a thought that he kept putting out into the universe. You know, I had not planned to do this, and I'm not sure I remember it perfectly, but when Ed Powers did his reading, he began it with a quote from Neville Goddard. And there's a story that Neville tells about our thinking that I want to share with you. So Neville did counseling, and he was counseling somebody who brought along I think it was their grandson or their son, and he would wait. He was a young boy. He would wait in another room, and he would listen. And one of the things he wanted was a dog, and his parents didn't want a dog. And so he would use the tools and techniques that Neville Goddard was teaching his mom or his grandma, I don't remember who, and he would put them out into the universe for a dog. Well, his school was having a contest, an essay contest, and the winner of the contest was going to get a dog. So now here he enters and he wins. His parents don't want a dog. But it was so incredible to them when he told them what he did, the exact dog that he would put out. He had this picture, we call it a mental equivalent of the dog he wanted. He knew exactly the dog, he knew exactly the breed that he wanted. And that was the dog, and that was the breed that was the winner of first prize. And so his parents gave in, and he got the dog that he wanted. But the point is, here he was listening in and practicing what we teach as he heard his relative learning from Neville Goddard. You know, one of the things that we say is that the universe is impersonal, that God values each of us alike. There are no favorites. The principles that govern the universe work for all of us alike. And the other thing is, you know, so many of us were taught that God could be vengeful and angry. Well, we don't believe that. We don't believe that God has moods. God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And you know, it's kind of tough, like I said, to cover everything in one 20 or 30-minute talk. But I do want to talk a little bit about our concept of prayer. When we pray, and we call it spiritual mind treatment, and we call it that because when New Thought first came into being, most of what they did, or a lot of what they did, was healing people. So when we pray, we work in our own mind. We know the truth of our being. Our prayers don't move God. Our prayers move us. They put us into the flow of God's energy. So Holmes says the one who completely believes in the power will get the best results. And he also tells us we should keep praying until we see the result we want. You know, theoretically, one prayer should do it for us. But for most of us, our lives don't change at once. Our lives change incrementally. And as we keep putting our thoughts out, more and more change occurs in our life. So in short, what we are and what we are to become and what we are to experience depends on our thinking. That's how we team up and use the creative power of spirit. And it's not one thought, one time. It's actually the pattern of our thinking. And the other thing, one of the things that I find so loving and so helpful in my own life is that whatever thought has done, thought can undo and redo. So if there's somebody listening to this that is in a place that's very hurtful or painful, whatever we've brought into our life, if we're not happy with it, we can undo it and we can redo it. Holmes said, an hour a day in silent meditation won't save us from the confusion of life, but 51% of our thinking is what counts. So one of my favorite examples explaining the power of spirit comes from Eric Butterworth. And what Eric Butterworth, he was a Unity minister. He compares spirit's power to the power in a rheostat. So, you know, when we use a rheostat, I know a lot of us have it in dining rooms. We get to choose how much light we experience. If, you know, maybe we're working in there and we want a lot of light, we can turn up the light. And if we're having a romantic dinner in there, we can turn down the light and just have a little bit of light. But all of the electric power is all there all the time. We get to choose how much of that electric power we experience. In our life, all of God's power is always available to us. We get to choose how much of God's power we experience in our life. Eckhart, not Eckhart Tolle, you know what? I just blanked on the person that I want to tell you, it'll come to me. Meister Eckhart said, and this is a paraphrase, he said years ago, God is always at home but we're on vacation. So I want to close with a quote from Ernest Holmes. He wrote, "God is always God. No matter what our emotional storm or what our objective situation may be, there is always a something hidden in the inner being that has never been violated. We may stumble, but always there is that eternal voice forever whispering in our ear, that thing which causes the eternal quest, that thing which forever sings and sings." God bless you. Thank you for being with us, and have a wonderful week.